Sup nerds, today I'm going to teach you how to make a Game Boy macro. If you're wondering why we have two, that's because I'm going to show you two different methods. There are no mod kits for these. You just use the original parts and you need some resistors. In fact, let's go over the things you actually need for this. A DS Lite, or at least the motherboard and the bottom screen. You don't really need the top screen unless you need the speakers out of it, but you're going to want to have the bottom half shell at the very least. You're going to need a soldering iron and obviously some solder. And since a lot of people do this as their first mod, I highly recommend getting flux. Very helpful, and I'll show you why later. I really just recommend flux to everybody because even I still use it all the time. It's a very helpful tool. But a lot of people like to act like they're so good that they don't need it. That's a bunch of crap. And you're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver and a tri-wing screwdriver. I highly recommend getting the iFixit Protect toolkit. I am not sponsored by them yet. Hit me up, iFixit. I really like the company and they make really good tools. Plus, you'll get like every bit you'll ever need. You get a lot of other tools for prying and it's just a really good kit. The toolkit also comes with these tweezers that I use literally every time I mod, which you'll definitely need for this mod. And you'll need some resistors that I'll link down below. Future Jake here. I forgot to say, you also need some 99% isopropyl alcohol. You can get lower 90s or even 70%, but the higher the percent, the better it is for the motherboard. Let's get started. We're gonna start with the black one here. I'll run through everything because I want this to be as in-depth as possible. The second one I won't probably show every step, just the more integral steps of the other option you have. The first thing you wanna do is take off the battery cover. The DS has a mixture of Phillips head and tri-wing. Technically, I think it's JIS, which is very, very similar, but still slightly different to the Phillips head. A Phillips head should work just fine. Then from here, I just take out the battery by getting my fingernail under the tab. There's this little tab right here, and you just pull it out. I set that off to the side, no problem. That's gonna uncover two more Phillips head screws. We're just gonna take those out real quick. And over here on my mod mat is a bunch of little holes for organizing screws. So I like to put them down in about the spot they would be on the board. That one there, this one there. Then you're going to take some tweezers and just lift the pad up. I wouldn't stab it in the middle unless you don't care about reusing these. And then I just stick them on the edges. And do it to both sides. And you can find two more Phillips head screws underneath each of those. And here's where you can switch to your tri-wing bit. I just like to do all the Phillips heads that I can because that's what you need to start with. Take off the battery because I like to switch bits as little as possible. And there are four of these tri-wing screws. We got one right here, another here, and we got another one right down here in the battery compartment. But like I said, there's four of them. And I typically forget about this one, and I feel like a lot of other people do too, because depending on the system, it does blend in. We've got one right here in the DS card slot. It's a small one, and that's it. And from here, we can carefully put our fingernail underneath and just pry it up very slowly and carefully. And there's your back half off. Set that off to the side. Swap back over to the Phillips head, and there's one more screw right here. Next thing, you want to take off the L and R buttons. They have springs on them, so you want to pinch them as you lift up so they don't break off. They're very strong, so they probably won't break off, but you might break this plastic here. Next thing we can do is lift up the board because nothing is holding it back. Be very careful though because the screen is still attached. What I like to do is get my fingers underneath the screen and push up. I'm going to grab it by the DS cart slot and pull it back up and over a little bit and just open it up like a notebook. Some of the buttons and membranes might come with you. That's okay. Next, I'm going to lift the bail up on the screen here. Again, just get your fingernail under there, lift up. Then I'm going to put some force on the ribbon cable right here, not too much, and just pull out. I close the notebook back a little bit, not fully putting it back in position, but just enough because probably should have pulled these out first. You want to pull this out, just pulling up at kind of an angle, and do the same thing here. Boom. Be careful because the black wire runs underneath the cart slot. So we're going to take the other end and just pull. Sometimes it's easier if you want to take this piece off here too. It is stuck with some sticky tape, so it might take a little extra force, but also be careful. Do not lose this piece because we need it. It holds the BIOS, so you do not want to lose that. It will not start up without one of those. Then that'll give us some more room to play with the wire. There are components underneath the cart slot, so be careful, but if you find the right spot, it should pull right through. Then we can lift up. Make sure you're holding onto the screen when you pull the board away, because you have not only this ribbon cable here, but you also have this ribbon cable right here. I'm gonna peel the membrane off. Just put the buttons off to the side. Don't lose them, they are very small. And then we're gonna take care of these next two screws right up in the top corner. These are a lot longer than the other screws, so don't mix them up. And now we should be able to drop all the buttons out. It's okay to just take all the buttons out right now, or else they'll just fall out. And those two screws were holding this little piece in here. So since it's unscrewed, you can kind of just lift up and then pull this out. The hinge will come with it if your hinge hasn't broken out yet. Then we can slide all of the wires across like this. Then we can slide the ribbon cable through this little slit. And then I just push the entire thing through like that. And we are fully separated from the top screen. The only reason you would need to get into the top screen is if you want to use any of the speakers in here. You can also buy a switch speaker and those work great. Since this is the cheapest Game Boy mod you can do, people will just take the speakers out of here, making it cheaper. Very quickly, if you do want to get the top screen apart, we're gonna dig our tweezers through this too. I'm gonna be a lot more rough with it because this top screen's broken, does not matter. Probably should have showed that off at the beginning of the video. Peel all four of these off. These are all Phillips heads, so you can just unscrew. Then, once all four screws are out, you should be able to just put some force on the top and slide it. You want to slide the inside forward, the outside back. It's not going to slide super easy all the time, but once you get a bit of a gap right up here, you can usually just pull up and you're in. Then just like the bottom screen, push the top screen. Just push the top screen out. This one's gonna stick a little bit more. And I'm not even gonna worry about disassembling this any further because again, it's broken, we don't really care about it. But here will be our first piece of soldering, and I'm just going to heat up both the pads while lightly pulling on the speaker, and the wire should break free pretty easily. Do the same thing to the other side. Boom. Now I'm gonna unplug my soldering iron, set it off to the side because we don't need it anymore, or for now. I'm gonna set these off to the side. Don't need them. Don't need any of the top half. Set the speakers off to the side. Grab your bottom half. These are the last 5 Phillips screws. We're just gonna go ahead and take them all out. They're all the same size, so I'm just gonna lump them all together and bust through them really quickly. Take this out. Take this out. All these plastic pieces can come out, and the metal shielding. Gently press out these the power switch and the volume rocker. If you slide the volume one all the way to plus, it should fall out. And I'm gonna go grab a bucket because we're gonna put all the plastic pieces in this bucket and we're gonna go wash it. Make sure you don't lose these little metal pieces in the wash. So we're just gonna take these out and set them off to the side. Here I'm just using some dish soap and hot water. Now while those are both soaking, we're gonna take care of the motherboards. I'm gonna unhook the screen just like we did with the top screen before, lifting up the bail and pulling it out. I don't typically unhook the digitizer because it's very small and not fun to work with, so I just leave it in. So then I typically lay everything out like this, and now we can start the cleaning process. I'm gonna spray this all down. Whether you have a spray bottle or not, try to avoid getting too much on the screen. So what I typically do is I just cover it with my hand and only aim at the motherboard. You can also do it with a paper towel, but the hand method has worked well for me. I'm gonna take my mom's toothbrush and I'm just gonna spray it a little bit, soften up the bristles, and then we can just do this. Then once you've cleaned this side, grab both the screen and the motherboard, flip them over, cover the screen up, and spray. Don't forget to stick the bristles inside of the cart reader. That'll help if your games aren't being read easily. Now to clean the screens, we're just gonna go ahead and spray a paper towel and then wipe it like that. And actually, it looks like we are lucky in this one. For the more scratched up screen, we actually have a screen protector on it. I will peel that off at the end. Flipping them back over to this side, let's do the soldering. We're gonna solder to LED A2 and LED C2. Simple as that. Now I'm gonna unplug my soldering iron because I forgot to grab the resistors. And here we have our little itty bitty resistor. The reason we're using this is because it will take the power that normally goes to the top screen and just suck it up. Probably a better way to explain that, but I don't really know that much. So we're gonna take it in our tweezers, very carefully set this down. It does not matter the orientation. All we're gonna do is push one end very carefully to the solder blob, heat it up, and hold it until it dries. I'm going to push that a little bit closer. You want it to be as center as possible over there. And actually, I should practice what I preach. We're going to use some flux. So you just put a little dab on both ends. That should be plenty. And what flux does is it magnets all the solder to only the metal pieces that need solder. We're gonna go ahead, do that on that side. Then I'm gonna hold this down and just press it down. Once it gets hot like it did, the resistor should go down into the solder and everything should be nice and flat. Boom. I'm gonna double check that everything is good just by heating both ends up again, and you should have pretty good joints from there. It should look something like this. Now what we're going to do is once again covering up the screen, spray that down. You can use a toothbrush, but flux is, at least this flux is very sticky, so I'm going to use a paper towel here, and it's easier to get around everything and make sure you get all that gunk off. Actually, while we're here, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up these button pads a little more. And that's really all you need. You can put it all back together. Once you've cleaned off all of your plastic pieces, put that all back together, you're good to go. But I'm gonna show you how to do it in a little bit of a cooler way. But I don't have the pieces to make it cooler in an easier way than I actually normally do it. So I'm going to throw it to future me who's going to be doing this over in the other set, and I'm going to put some voiceover over it. But first, let's go and finish washing the shells and buttons. I let it soak for a couple hours, and then I scrubbed every piece down with a toothbrush before rinsing it off. Dry it off with a towel and let it air dry for a few hours before putting anything back together. This is an optional step, but if you're using a white shell or buttons like me and they're a bit yellow, you can drop them in another bucket of hydrogen peroxide with some UV lights shining on them like this. This is called retrobrighting, and it lightens the aging color that old plastic can sometimes get. Just leave it in until you're satisfied with the color and rinse off all the peroxide. It took about 12 hours for this one. Also, don't put any metal in here that you care about. It will rust very fast. Now we can go over how to add speakers if you want them. Add some solder to SPLO and SPRO. SPLO will get you the left side audio and SPRO will get you the right. Solder the red wire to either the right or left. I'm doing the left since the speaker would rest on the left side. And then solder the black to any ground on the board. I'm going to use this post on the charge port. Most people fit the speaker right here, but it's not easy. That's why I never add speakers to mine, so you're on your own for trying to fit them in. It might be easier if you remove the top screen connector. Now let's go over how to add the cooler version of this mod. Grab your LED of choice. I have these linked down below, and this will act as our resistor. Well, there is a resistor on the LED, but anyway, solder the red wire to LED A2 and the black wire to LED C2. Then you're going to want to plug the screen back in and make sure you close the latch. Also, do not forget to put this piece back in, otherwise it will not turn on. And boom, it works. I recommend cutting down the wires like this though. It'll make it easier in the limited space we have to work with. It should look something like this. Don't forget about this little nub too, we're going to want to screw that back in. Then you can put all the buttons and membranes back in their spots. After that, you can fit the LED where the top screen used to go as you set the motherboard down. You'll probably have to fidget with it a little bit, so take your time. Then screw the motherboard down. Double check that the wires aren't sticking up because we need to put the L and R buttons here. The spring should look like this. Then put the post through the hole and set it down in the shell. Use the tweezers to put the spring prong in between the plastic posts and test to make sure nothing is in the way of the buttons. Now we can put the bottom half of the shell back together. Make sure the volume switch is all the way to one side on both the plastic and the motherboard. Then do the same for the power switch, otherwise you might break them as you put the two halves back together. Now you can put all the screws back in their spots and we can button this thing up. And by the way, I was right about the screen protector. For the light tube, we are going to use an acrylic rod that I will link down below. Stick it in the left hinge hole and cut it where it meets the other side. And then I would super glue it to the right side. It should look like this when you're done. When I don't go the LED route, I do the same thing but with a painted wooden dowel. The diameter of those rods needs to be 3/16 of an inch. And here are the finished products. The LED isn't as bright as I would like, but when I do this with other colors, I normally put a straw over the top of the acrylic rod so it has the colors showing even when it's off. I just don't have any white straws that don't have a yellow and red stripe going down it. And just like the mods we make on stream, these things are up for sale right now on the website. It'll be the top link in the description. In fact, these have been up for sale the entire time you've been watching this video, assuming they haven't sold yet. Also, at the time of recording, I still have these guys up for grabs, as well as these awesome shirts, retroremastered.com. This is the most I've had up for sale at the same time for a long time, so you might want to jump on these while you still can. This thing glows in the dark. By the way, I am working on those Pokemon Ditto shirts that I talked about last week. I asked my members and patrons to help me choose shirt colors because it's a tough decision. So if you want to help me make decisions for the channel, you can hit that join button down below. Also, these guys get an extra exclusive video every month. Just saying. Maybe I should give them first crack at the merch too. But hopefully this video was in-depth enough for you. If you're wanting a little more guidance though, I did do a video a while back with my dad where I taught him how to make a macro. There are a lot of good tips in there for beginners, plus it's just a really funny video.
Oh, I'm bringing this back. I told your mom.
The dab?
Yeah. Sorry. There we go.
So if you want to see DJ Ames in action, I'll link it down below and it'll be at the end of the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. And if you did think this was a solid tutorial, please listen to Brittany. So like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later, guys. Use the tweezers to put the spring prong in between the... This is a tongue twister. Use the tweezers to put the spring prong in between the plastic posts. Use the tweezers to put the spring prong... Oh my god. Why do I do this to myself? Ooh, I used the wrong "your" there.